people are joining, and I'm going to get started just so that we can get through all the many amazing questions that we have and the answers that we're going to have. So for everyone that's joining, I want to welcome Andy Jiaming Tang, who's the author of Cinema Love, which was released in May of 2024. He's the winner of the Los Angeles Times Art Seidenbaum Prize for First Fiction, the Edmund White Award for Debut Fiction, and the Ferro-Grumley Award for LGBTQ Fiction. It was also a finalist for the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction and the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Fiction, which was just announced. And I know, sorry you didn't win, but there was a lot of great competition.
Yes.
So thanks for joining me, Andy, for the latest QLP book club.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So just so you know, for our book club, we only look at novels and fiction since we already published quite a bit of memoir and personal essay. In particular, I'm always eager to talk to writers who have investigated various forms of love. And so Cinema Love definitely fit the bill. So I'm glad that you agreed to do this. And for people who haven't read the book yet, it is about many things, but the central focus is the gay men in rural China in Fuzhou and the women who marry them and how they eventually end up in the U.S. and in New York City, and in particular in Chinatown and Manhattan, but also the one in the boroughs. So I guess I just want to start with, this book feels personal, but not autobiographical. It feels heavily researched. And I just want to know, what inspired it? How did you decide I'm going to embark on this? It was also, did you start writing it in the pandemic?
Yeah, I started writing it in the pandemic, and the sort of the spark that inspired the book was this trip that I took with my family when I was 16, somewhere in my teens. And I went to China, and I was in a very rural part of the country, similar to what is in the opening pages of the book. And I saw an older family friend make a pass at another man. So for some context, this man is at the time he was around 60 years old. He's married to a woman. He has 3 kids. And he kind of had a feminine affect, but for the most part, within the context of my family and the community that we came from, he was just your average married man. And so when I saw him make the pass at the other man at the bus stop, and when I saw this combination of desire and fear in his eyes, right, it made me want to think about who are these gay men in these rural parts of the world, not just China, but I'm also thinking about rural Alabama, where I went to graduate school, who don't have the physical or the verbal language to communicate or express queer love or queer lust or romance. And so that was the moment of curiosity for me. And so for many, many years after that, I started to read a lot of both books and also scholarly essays about gay people in China. It never just and I tried many times to try to write a story centered around those people, but it always failed because there was a ceiling to my curiosity, and there was a ceiling to what I could imagine for those people. And then at a certain point, I started to think about that man's wife, and where she fit into the picture, and what her desires were, and her ambitions, whether or not she knew, and if she did, how did she manage to stay in this relationship for 30 years? And so that's really the thing that allowed the book, which was just an idea, to become a fulsome project during the pandemic when I started writing.
You mentioned rural Alabama. Where was it?
Oh, I was in Tuscaloosa, so it wasn't actually rural. But
college town.
What?
College town.
Yeah, it's a college town, so it's really not the same thing as the sticks of China. But I do remember reading a lot about those rural communities down there, and also going to the gay bar there, and also how completely different it was from the ones in New York City.
Funny enough, I've been to that gay bar in Tuscaloosa because a friend of mine got married in Alabama, and we went there the night before, and it was a amateur drag queen night, and we had like dollar beer, which is definitely very different than New York,
Right.
and got to see some queens in the Deep South. So I know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like I think that like initially when like my publisher was like especially my UK publisher, they were like, "Oh, like this is a story about forbidden love. It's a story about like this specific kind of love that can only happen in China." I always envision it as like this thing that could happen everywhere because of in rural spaces.
Well, absolutely. Not even just in rural spaces, but mixed orientation marriages are more common and they've been around for millennia.
Right.
And weirdly enough, the idea of lavender marriages is gaining in popularity. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Um, and some of that is now conscious. Before, the idea of gay men marrying as camouflage, a straight woman or another gay woman, that's has a long history. So obviously, yeah, it's not just
Right.
something that exists in this one thing, but your specific idea around that is pretty fascinating. And the
Mhm.
fact that you then focus much of the book is from the female perspective or from what the women are experiencing. So tell me about that, because often we're like, oh, write what you know, and you're not a woman. So like, how did you inhabit that, and how did you progress in your writing in that?
I think in many ways I was writing what I knew because um I did not have firsthand access to the kinds of gay characters that are in this book. Like I grew up in a very different kind of context from them, and like one of the primary aspects of their love, I would say, is that like they don't know how to express it. They don't have the physical, cultural, or verbal language to be gay people. They don't like we like growing up. I had many um different examples to kind of borrow.
Hmm.
And so, like, I actually felt it was easier to write from the perspectives of the woman because they were the women in my family. They were, nail techs, lower middle class, working class women who worked in spaces that aren't super glamorous, but then they try to make the best of it. And the friendships that they formed to survive those circumstances. And then, like in the context of the story, one of them is married to a gay man, and then there's a mirroring in which there's another woman married to a gay man later in the book. Um, but I often think about that story I told earlier about the family friend who was 60, his wife. My mother told me one time that like she called my mother and was like, "Hey, like my husband's always having these men over." And like they won't leave. And like she never used the word like he's gay. Like she never explicitly brought it out into the space of homosexuality. But then she knew, and then my mother knew. And I think that there was an understanding between them. And so like inhabiting those women's perspectives felt to me more natural because that coded language of like we know that these are gay people and we know that they're there, but we can't name it, was there all my life.
Right. Well, so let's talk about the scope of Cinema Love. So it's quite large, right? It basically starts in Fuzhou in rural China
Yeah.
in the 80s. And we're focused on a place called the Workers' Cinema, which there's a woman who is a ticket taker. This is where the men come to cruise and hook up. And also, she has a ghost of her brother who is also gay, who is
Yeah.
haunting her and telling her the stories of all these men. So first, and eventually we get to New York, and then we come all the way to a few years ago in the 21st century. So okay, that's a bit wild. You've probably never been to the Workers' Cinema. How did you imagine the space and capture the space?
I think that like I was reading a lot of like at the time I was reading a lot of like I had access to my university's like library system, and so like I had a lot of access to scholarly essays. And so like I was really interested in like, okay, so like these people are gay and they're like in the sticks, like where do they have sex? Like that was really
Right.
just the question that I had. And so the like like economically, like if you are wealthy or even middle class, like if you are a gay person, it's very easy to hide it if you are in a culture where you cannot express that, right? Like you
Yeah.
can go to a love hotel, you have your own apartment. The characters in this book and the ones in my family do not have that, and so like I went to a lot of um these books and these essays, and the places that kept coming up were like the parks, public restrooms, and theaters. And it was sort of by chance that I chose this theater as like the space for cruising. But there was also, after I finished writing a first draft of the book, I read Times Square Red, Times Square Blue,
Mm-hmm.
Emil R. Delaney.
Daniel Delaney's book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, like the cruising in the theaters in Times Square. And so like it was sort of nice that like I was writing into I think a legacy that I was not aware of at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
The cruising legacy and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Old Second and Baomei.
Right.
Well, first, I do want to play a bit of it's going to be a later clip, but tell us about who did you base Baomei off of, or like how did you inhabit this woman, because she's very complex.
Oh my God, I think all of the women in the book are my mother. I think they're all my mother. Like so to give the listener some context, I would say that there's two main women in the book. One of them is Balmain, and she is more she's ostensibly more sympathetic to the gay men. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's the ticket taker at the movie theater where they go to cruise, and she uh uh does her hardest to protect their identities from being exposed. And then there's another woman named Yan Hua who is married to one of those gay men who cruised, and she has a really contentious relationship with her husband because he was
Right.
gay. And I think that that is my mother, but she never had a gay husband. I think she had a gay son. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so so like it's not to put her business out there, but like I think she is the person who has allowed me to become the person that I am today, and is the most supportive person that I know. But she also does not understand queerness.
Right.
I don't think that she would. I don't think to this day, despite knowing that I have a boyfriend and that I have dated men and that she's met my boyfriends, plural. I don't think that she would be able to tell her friends or to herself that my son is gay. And so, like, there's this wonderful woman who in this book who is protective of the gay men. That is also my mother. But there's also one who hates them, at
Yeah.
least within one part of the book. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And now I'm worried that I'm going to get the characters mixed up, but one of them also feels this tremendous guilt because she exposed what was happening and people died because of her confession or her knowledge of what was happening at the workers' cinema.
Yeah, yeah.
And
By
that's and which
purely
one is
by
that?
what?
And who is that? I'm trying to remember now who that was.
See, the problem is I don't remember either because I wrote this book so long ago. I have not touched it. But I'm pretty sure it was Yan Hua
Yeah, I think it was Yanhua.
whose guilt about her hatred of her husband forces her to do this, but then she's guilty about doing it too.
But then tell us about Hin Bao, her ghost brother.
Her ghost brother, yeah, like it's like I was at this. It was in this time period where like I think I was really interested in Chinese folk spirituality. I was curious about how both of my parents are ostensibly not religious, but they follow a system of belief where if you really like nailed it down, like there is an afterlife, right? Like like it's very it's almost um like let me give you an example. Like every single year, on a certain date, if we are in China, we would have to go to this relative or that relative's gravesite to burn paper money, so that the ghosts could have money in the afterlife. And then but then if you were to speak to them and ask, they would say, "Oh, we don't believe in ghosts." And so that contradiction was really funny to me, because it's like, then why are you doing this? Like, do you have a whole calendar that is not just on the wall, but is innate in you, where you have to do these things on these dates in order to have a fulfilled spiritual life. And so there's this character in the book who decides to work in the theater because she believes that her dead brother inhabits it. And yeah, it was more so an exploration of that spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Sorry, I'm getting this essay. Are you getting the essay?
I don't think so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I grew up in Okinawa, Japan, and so Shinto Buddhism believed a similar thing. And they would have the paper money and fruits, and you would do this thing outside of the little, not a temple, but it's like where the body is.
Right.
Or the
Right.
So anyway, that was an interesting part of the backstory, I guess you could say, of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you have this interesting part where you talk about the worker cinema, and you really put it forth as like a place of defiance. It's like a subversive space, but it's also a place for betrayal, where married men, and I'm just going to quote the book, had to humiliate their wives to satisfy their desires.
Mm-hmm.
It's really poignant. I mean, it hurts, right? Because this is the thing about some of these misorientation marriages, is that they may be protecting people, but they're also deeply wounding.
Right. Right.
So tell me about that, accessing that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about a way to talk about this in an intelligent way. I think it part of it reflects my journey of understanding with regard to that relationship that I talked about earlier on this live. I think that primarily my sympathies as a younger person were with the man who couldn't express himself as a gay man. And I do believe that when we initially went on submission to publishers, that was kind of the main draw. And I think that also to many readers, the fact that the book is about the woman is probably something that is possibly disappointing, because they want to know more about this gay perspective. But to me, I could not divorce it from the fact that his wife knew that he was cheating on her, and that his children knew that he was cheating on their mother. And so I didn't want to paint I mean, those two, that husband and wife duo, they're not in the book, but I didn't want to paint either representative of them as the villain.
Right.
I thought that there was something really strange about the fact that why did you stay, right? There is something inexplicable about her actions of staying in this marriage that for her did not seem to offer, it's not like he was rich, and it's not like he was super handsome either, and it's not like he was good around the house. Why did you stay in this marriage? And I do think that there is a certain kind of rural sensibility of keeping up appearances, and not making too much of yourself, that I think is reflected in these characters. And that was the dynamic that I think I was wanting to explore a bit.
I mean, you also definitely get into the monetary dynamics, which I appreciate, because a lot of times books are written from a sort of upper middle class perspective, or either a comfortable note. There's never any money problems, and everybody in this book has issues around money,
Right.
which is just good. So I want to talk about the word and concept of love. You have several passages that locate love and what the closeted men are doing in the basement of the worker cinema. And some might just call that lust. And so I just wanted to say, how do you define love? And when did you decide to label certain things love? And how did you feel about that, conflating love and lust together?
Yeah, I think that the entire book was kind of an exploration of what that might mean when you are a person of few means. And I mean, like, part of, like, I think a major part of the exploration is like, what does it mean to be a gay person when you come from a place where homosexuality doesn't socially or culturally exist, right? Like, and what does it mean to be that gay person and then love the place that you come from back? Like, that is probably, like, to me, the most succinct uh, exploration of the first half of the book for me as the writer. And so, like, as like the person who's not writing the book, like, I think love is like sustained curiosity towards a person. Like, if you put aside the physical attraction and all of that, it's a certain kind of sustained curiosity and attention, and a desire to know more about another. And so, like, these characters, they cannot do that. Like, you know, like, in the context of a cruising theater, you cannot know what this other person is, and you do not want yourself to be revealed to them. And so, like, when you remove the curiosity from the equation, like, yes, I do think perhaps that, like, what is happening in the theater is a certain kind of lust. But I think in the absence of I guess, like, everything else, right? Like, these a lot of I envision a lot of the men who are going to this cruising theater as married to women, or they have girlfriends, or they're older. I think that, like, to them, they find a kind of camaraderie there that is private, perhaps even to themselves, but which feels close to love, I would hope. And so, like, that was sort of what I was exploring there. Yeah.
So this is an interesting segue. This takes place later in the book, but I'm gonna play a clip from the audiobook, which you said you haven't engaged with the book recently, so be prepared to hear the narrator
Yeah.
of your book. This is when May discovers that her husband is having sex with another man.
Yeah.
She took hold of the hut when 4A citizen entered. Before entering, he heard two voices on the veranda. He smelled the scent of bleach soaked on a napkin and something else. Something she recognized but didn't receive. Desire. Desire. Starting at the key he pushed into the lock. When the door opened, and she realized the two voices belonged for one person, and it was her husband speaking in two tones and for two people. The other a thin man pinned under his waist. She laughed, canceled with hot tears rolling down her tight red cheek. The sight was comical. Her husband's muscular body atop his lover's slender one, resembling an ant lifting a crumb. And the whole time his hand reached out of a form meant for food. And when the sight stopped being fun, when it transformed itself into the horror, Jane lay in her bed for 20 days. She screamed, became a person other than herself. May, who was usually quiet, who put CDs into a Discman and sang to herself, who learned how to read by connecting pictures to words in YouTube, who missed her siblings more than her parents, and who was too ashamed of her coming to write letters to Frank. She'd only reached junior high. She saw her husband fucking another woman and became possessed.
I'll stop it right there. So what was it like hearing that? And tell me a little bit about constructing that passage, because it's so rich in detail.
Oh my God, I genuinely like this is gonna be difficult because I don't remember, you know, like, it's been so long. I think I wrote the book when I was like 22, 23, and now I'm like 28. I'm trying to think about, like, what I can reconstruct from I think primarily, like, so the situation is that there's a woman who comes home and then sees her husband having sex with another man, and then she's enraged, even though that ostensibly speaking, she probably knows he's gay.
Right.
And I do think that the reflection there is of a certain kind of attitude common in my family and probably in others as well, where like they're okay with a person being gay so long as it's not explicit and so long as it's not like out in the open. And so like for her, this woman, she's confronted not just by her husband's infidelity, which throughout their marriage she has swept under the rug. She's also confronted by by the humiliation of him being gay, which I think in the community that she comes from would reflect on her. And so like I'm trying to like I think I was trying to construct the anger my mother felt when I would reveal that I was, gay to people in the family, even though that the circumstances are very, very different. Because like the anger doesn't make sense. The anger is inexplicable. It is something that the person carries that should be attached to um, the thing that they're witnessing, but then it doesn't make sense. She knows that her husband's gay. She knows that this probably is going on, but then she's angry. And same with my mother.
Well, if I may, I think you're also connecting it to something which is probably called revulsion, right? Like people, even though they know what their straight son or daughter is doing sexually, they can somehow tune it out.
Yeah.
But when they think of their gay son having gay sex,
Right.
it's revolting to them.
Right. Right.
And interestingly enough, I wanted to talk about, you described the smells of gay sex quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
What?
You talk about the way it smells in these cases.
Yes.
Yes.
I do. I know. I think it was because like the first time that I was in like that I had sex with another man, I was like, oh, like this isn't what I thought of. Like you imagine vanilla and roses, but it doesn't quite smell.
No.
It's like, and sometimes like it's not pleasant. And like the conditions in which I was being intimate were like are like I'm in a house, I'm in a bed, like you shower beforehand, like
Right.
these characters probably did not shower beforehand. And so like I think the physicality of it was important for me to convey. And also like I like like I didn't want to convey necessarily that it was like a bad filth. But like it was a kind of filth. I mean, some people like it, but like for these characters, like they didn't care.
You have some beautiful moments between the women. And I want to mention that even though the topics are quite heavy and there are some really difficult descriptions, there's also a lot of humor. And you have the funny moments, rude moments, silly moments between these women, especially little Amy.
Yeah.
And there is the nail tech side of it. And your mother, you mentioned, has had that job. I don't know if she still does. So tell me about that, the experience of being in these more female spaces and trying to communicate that.
Yeah, I think primarily like the thing that I wish to convey in any kind of writing is like just like I mean like life is really funny. Like which is like not a very interesting thing to say, but like I do struggle sometimes with like very, very serious fiction that is about people on the margins and like the people are not funny. And I don't need them to be like telling jokes. I don't need them to be like harring on the page. But I do think that my primary experience of growing up around these people who didn't have very much were that they were extremely funny and they were incredibly rude. And they were incredibly rude in a loving way. And I think a lot about like, at a certain time, in a certain time period, like drag queens were valorized for being rude and very, very funny, right? Like they didn't have to be like like spokespeople for um gay rights in a very serious way. And so like I think about the ways in which these women can convey lovingly what it means to be poor and ambitious while still being funny, because I do think that is the closest reflection to life that I have. I think everybody that I've met that is in my life is funny. It's really dreadful to be having a conversation with someone and you're like, oh, you're not funny. And so like it's just the most natural way for me to write. I think a lot of the humor comes from the dialogue. And I don't think that I was particularly trying to convey anything. That's just how the people in my family talk. And that's just how the people that are like I live in Sunset Park, which is close to the Brooklyn Chinatown, and I'll hear snatches of conversation. And it's like that's just how people talk. And my experiences with my mother, who's a nail tech, is that like she would often just tell me like the things that she and her girlfriends would talk about at work. And it's always like shit talk. And so like I wanted to bring that into this book that is ostensibly very, very heavy and about very, very heavy subjects.
And you mentioned, or this is another quote I'm going to read, that these women, especially in the garment factory, they refuse to love their husbands and instead choose to love each other. And so I think that that's also important, that the book Cinema Love is not just about romantic love, it's about friendship, it's about other types of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, tell me why you wanted to explore that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think once again it has a lot to do with how I grew up, and like there's two other things. I think that this is a generalization, but like I think that sometimes like when it comes to like gay fiction or gay media, like the foregrounding is often of like the male to male the same sex relationship. And I wanted to convey that, but also like the world that allows that to happen, the world beyond the same sex relationship. And so like my world was one in which uh, the men in my family, they would go to work at Chinese restaurants like throughout um, the East Coast, which is reflected in the book. A lot of the male characters go to work in like Pennsylvania at Chinese restaurants. They go to work in Boston. Growing up, like it was my mother and my aunt and a bunch of other women of their age and of their status. Like they were the ones who raised us. And so like I thought about the fact that like, you know, like what does it mean to be in love with your husband when you see him once a week, or once a month? And when he returns, he's so tired and he smells of grease, and then he gives you the money, and then like the next morning he has to go again. Like, you know, like what is the world that exists? What is the romantic world that exists within that system? So that's something that I wish to explore. But also like I witnessed all of that as a child. And I witnessed the way these women supported each other. I witnessed the way that they fought and that they would try to make the very ugly spaces that we lived in nice and pretty and domestic. And I do think that a lot of my sensibilities as a gay man come from that. And so it felt very natural to put a spotlight on that and how that affects the ways the gay men in the book interact with each other.
So this is a personal question, but you talked about your mother's difficulty around your sexuality, but also an acceptance.
Yeah.
But tell me what it's like putting out a book like this, and what does he or your family say or react?
Oh, they can't read English, so like they don't, they just know, like they're like, oh, like he's like the weird guy. Now he asks a lot of questions. Like why is he always asking me about like like I would interview them, right? Like, so like they're like, he's always asking questions, but now there's like an excuse why I ask those questions. They don't really know what the book's about.
Okay.
They just know that like I've put out a book about immigrants. And my mother knows now more explicitly that it's about gay people, but like I don't think that it bothers her. I don't think that she like she's in a much better place with that. Yeah.
I know it's been translated into several languages, but none, not Chinese.
No, not Mandarin. Yeah. Like I think for practical reasons it'd be very, very difficult for it to enter that market. Yeah.
And you have news to share with us about the paperback edition in English.
Yes, the paperback is going to come out next year in June. So timed around Pride Month. And I don't think I have an exact date yet, because those always move around. But like watch out for June, and the paperback edition of Cinema Love will come out.
And obviously it's in audio and an ebook and everything.
Yes.
So I know you're tired of talking about the book, but I'm glad that you're still talking about it. And I know you're not going to tell us what you're working on now, but you're still writing, correct?
Yes, I am still writing. Yeah, like I think it's not so much like every time like it's been like a year and 5 months since the book came out, and so like every time that I do an event now, I get very, very anxious because I genuinely do not know many of the events that occurred in the first book. Because it's been so long, and also like you like it's a really strange journey. Like the book's journey is static. Like it at some point it ends. But then readers discover it, and then they discover it in the way that it's always going to be. But then you, the person who wrote it, are continuing to change, and your interests change. And so like I think even a year ago, if you were to speak to me about this book, I would be much more interested in talking about the gay men. But now I'm much more interested in talking about the women, because the next book that I'm working on is about working class women, yet again. But like because of the interest shifting, like it feels very, very strange to hear passages from the book and being like, wow, like why did I write that? Because I don't know anymore.
Yeah, that I should mention that narrator is Samantha Tan. Did you have any involvement in the casting or getting the audience?
So, yeah, I don't think so. I I think they give you some options, and then you're like, okay, like, because like I mean I don't know who these people are, so it's so I just like, okay, sure, whoever do it.
Well, she does an amazing job of inhabiting all the characters. And now that I've been working at Audible for a few years, I listen to all the books as well, so it's good.
Right, yeah. And I do think I do remember that like wanting it to be a female narrator was deliberate, because I wanted it, because I do think they originally approached it with like a lot of like male narrators, but because the book to me it is really about the woman. I wanted there to be a woman narrator for the audiobook.
Well, what did your boyfriend think about it?
My boyfriend?
Yeah.
He's not allowed to talk to me about my book or my writing. I'm very I'm somewhat cagey about my writing. Generally speaking, I have a little writing group that I share my work with, and then I share it with my agent, but like I don't share it with anyone else. And I feel really strange when people either compliment me or say anything about the book, because it's like I don't know, like I feel like it's like somebody that I sent off to college, but then they keep coming back. And so like I am like, oh my god, you're here again.
That sounds like a parent.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Well, Andy, this has been fun, and I learned a lot from the book, and I hope others will too. Is there anything else that you want to make sure people know as they're discovering the book, or what that you want them to keep in mind that we haven't touched on?
I can't think of anything. I think that if you are somebody who is interested in specifically like working class, like Chinese dynamics, I would suggest Peter Kwong. who has like a wonderful book about like the working conditions of Chinatown in the 80s and 90s, called Forbidden Workers. And then a much more fun read and much more commercial read is Patrick O'Radin Keefe wrote this book called The Snakehead, which is about the crime syndicate that smuggled many Chinese people from Southeast China to America during the once again 80s, 90s, 2000s. And that wave of immigration is the wave of immigration that my family came to America.
Okay.
On. And so like it's just like that one's a fun book. Like it's not even like academic. And so yeah, just plugging those two.
Yeah, people love his book Empire of Pain and with a lot of other. What are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? Oh my god, this is so embarrassing. I only read like two authors. And they are Alice Munro and Elena Ferrante. And I'm rereading Elena Ferrante because I think like one of the things that kept being spoken about with the book that I'm talking about now is that it was really tender, and that the love in it was really tender, and which is not a bad thing. But like I'm really curious about Ferrante because the love in her books are furious. She is ostensibly a very like her narrators are very angry, and so I want to think about anger more deliberately. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing what's next.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.